All right, so real quick, just gonna check on a couple of hives. Get where you guys can see me. I installed some queens the other day, 2 days ago. I'm in some NUCs I made. So I'm just gonna go out real quick and release the queens if they're not released yet. I want them to go ahead and get started working. I don't want it to take them, 4 days or whatever to dig her out, to eat the candy out of the queen cages. So we're gonna go out here. I've got 4 NUCs set up. Just gonna show you guys the process real quick of what I do after 2 days. As long as the bees are not acting aggressive on the queen cages, a lot of times I release them 15 minutes after I put them in. If the hive's been queenless for a while, then they're usually pretty happy to get a queen. And then I'm also going to put some pollen patty in each NUC and work them a little bit. So let's do that. All right, so these are just some plywood NUCs. It's what I use to make quick NUCs. They'll be transferred to nice wooden hives later, but these plywood NUCs, there's a plan for making these on my website, or on the Facebook channel, or Facebook, sorry guys, on the YouTube channel. You guys are welcome to check that out. Just gonna give them a quick puff of smoke in there. Let that sit in there for a second. And I've got some pollen patty over here that I'm gonna put in there. I just cut off about a 2-inch strip, put it at the back of the NUC so the bees don't have to work so hard. Set the girls to the side. And you can see right there is the queen cage. They're hovered all around her trying to take care of her. So what I'm gonna do is just spread these frames apart just enough to get to her. Look out, girls. All right, and then I'm gonna get some smoke in there to get them off of her, so I can get some smoke in there so I can get them off of her, so I can grab it with my fingers without squishing a bee. There we go. I've got my hands on it, so now I can pry it apart a little more. Wiggle her out. See if they've got her out yet. And they haven't. She's still in there, so I'm going to let them out manually. Hopefully you guys can see that. So I'm going to open up this little door and let them crawl right out. There goes the queen. She just went down in there. She just went right down in there. So we know she's released. These little girls are curious. Alright, so now I'm just going to take the queen cage. Now that we've released her, I'm going to put the top back on the hive. I'm going to set this right up there. Those girls will be able to get out and they'll all go back into their hives. And then we're going to rinse and repeat that for this hive here. Give them a little bit of smoke. Give them a minute. Oh, forgot to put my pollen patty in this one. You guys are supposed to be helping me with this. That's what I use. It's a piece about 2 inches across out of a pollen patty. I'm just going to take and get that bee out of the way so I don't squish her. Every bee helps. And just pat it down between those frames a little bit so it's nice and flat and the lid can sit on flush without any gaps. There we go. And then that leaves me 1 piece of pollen patty left for this hive over here. We've smoked it. So I'm just going to take the lid off. And you can see I had put a Swiffer sheet in this one to help with the hive beetles. I'm going to take that out for now. I'll probably put some back in, but I want to get it out while I'm getting this queen out. Alright, so on this last hive here, we've got the queen cage in. Put in some pollen there. I'm going to give this particular one more day to kind of get used to her. And the main reason for that is there's a lot of activity around it, but not quite enough, and I don't want to manually release her and have them harm her. So yeah, I'll give them one more day, let her pheromone get through this hive a little bit better, and then we'll release her tomorrow. I've gone ahead and put a pollen patty in here, and I'm going to start feeding here shortly because we're going into a nectar dearth. And when you're making NUCs, especially in a nectar dearth, you need to prevent robbing. And to do that, just for me, and other people disagree, and that's fine, but for me the easiest way to do it is by open feeding away from the hives, and putting up robbing screens on all of my other hives. So these particular hives, I cut a really small 3/8 inch hole in the front for their entranceway, so it's as small as it can possibly be. They can guard it a little bit. We got about 3 full frames of bees in there, and I'll probably come back tomorrow when I take this queen out and just throw another frame of capped brood in there as well. I've got one empty frame, a frame of honey, a frame of larvae and eggs I took out of another hive when I made this split, or 2 frames of larvae and eggs, 2 frames of honey, and then an empty frame and a pollen patty. So that should get them through with the open feeding as well. But we'll go ahead and get these girls. They're pretty interested in her, as you can see, and they seem to be feeding the other bees through the holes in the queen cage, which is what you want to see. So yeah, I think I'll come back tomorrow and let them out. Just give them one more day, and yeah. So anyway, pretty easy to do. We're good to go. So what I've done, as you can see, 1, 2, 3 queens released. I'll probably come back after I get the queens released and put in some Swiffer sheets on these guys, so it's easy for them to deal with the varroamite, or not the varroamites, the hive beetles, to deal with the hive beetles. And yeah, these are good to go. And then what I'll do is, in about a week, I will come back and transfer these to 8-frame hive boxes, which is what I use. So that's it. Easy to do. Just add your queens, make your splits. When I do splits, I usually try to do 2 frames of eggs and brood, a frame of pollen, and an empty frame undrawn to give them something to work so they don't swarm right away, and a frame of honey. So that's what I've done. I put in a queen in each box. I took the splits out of other hives that I have. I can show you guys that process another day, but it's really simple. These 4 NUCs were all split from a single really strong hive, and that hive is going back just as strong as it was before. It was a 4-box, 2 deeps and 2 mediums hive, and I took 8 frames of brood and eggs out of it. So one of the deeps, replaced that deep with an empty one, and used those frames of eggs and larvae and sealed brood and stuff to make these 4 splits. So pretty simple to turn one hive into 5 in an hour's worth of work, and get your numbers up. I want these to be good and healthy and strong going into the fall honey flow. And it's July right now, the first week of July, so fixing to go into a pretty heavy dearth here. But I will feed pollen and sugar syrup to get these guys pretty populated, lots of bees by the fall, and hopefully get a good honey crop this fall. And at the least, that's another 4 hives that you go into winter with. And if you do have winter losses, you don't have to freak out so bad. As I tell the guys and gals that are getting into beekeeping that I talk to, the worst thing you can do is go into winter with 1 or 2 hives. And a lot of people are like, well, that's all the hives I want. And I'm like, okay, well, then be prepared to buy bees every spring, especially when you're new. To be honest, I lost 1 hive this winter, which doesn't even represent, a 1%, 2% loss for me. And it was my own fault. 3 things. I've covered this in other videos: starvation, condensation, and high mite loads. That's why you lose hives in the wintertime. This one particular I lost was due to starvation. Went out this spring, every bee in it was head first into a cell. dead as a doornail, and it's my fault. I had a candy board on it, let it run out, didn't check it. I guess I missed it, and yeah, they died. So lots of things can go wrong. The way you prepare for that is to have enough hives to make it through the wintertime, even with some losses. So at a minimum, 4 hives. If you have 25 or 30% losses, you still got 2 hives you can start splitting in the spring and rebuild those back up again. You go into winter with 1 or 2 and you lose one or lose both, because it can happen, and then you're buying $150 packages or $200 NUCs in the spring every year, and that's just not worth it. So anyway, Cliff with Funny Bug Bees, thanks for stopping by and watching the video. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.